So I'd like to take a moment to welcome everyone to this episode of the Nurses Station. I'm LaWanda Brown here with Regis College, and I had the unestimable privilege of having with me today Dr. Beverly Malone. I could list all of her accolades, but we only have 20 minutes, and she has done so much in the world of nursing and currently is the CEO of the National League for Nursing. So thank you so much for being with us this morning or this afternoon, Dr. Malone.
I'm delighted to be with you, LaWanda.
So every time we talk with nurses, and this is kind of a personal indulgence of myself, is I've often wondered as I work with nurses, how do people come to nursing? And I found that there have been so many different pathways. Some people dreamed it. So for you, Dr. Malone, how did we end up in nursing? Did it start in childhood, or tell us a little bit about your entry into nursing?
Sure. I was raised by my great-grandmother, and she was a community healer. And she always wanted me to go to college. And so it was with that in mind that I knew that I wanted to be like her. I knew I wanted to be, I knew I would never be as tall as she was, but I figured I could probably do something she wanted me to do, and that was to go to college. And that's exactly and nursing was her love. And so it was pretty easy to do.
Well, that's amazing. And community healer, that sounds like a story in itself
She is a
because of all
story
that.
all by herself. Yes,
Oh,
right.
wonderful. And it's amazing how those communities and the women in those communities fostered so many of the things that we see today, even in nursing, because I've heard a lot. My care for my grandmother, she was a diabetic patient. And as a young child, caring for her was what got me to thinking about wanting to become a nurse because of that. So that is certainly wonderful. So with your nursing career, I know you've done varied things. Did you start out in a particular discipline like med surg in the unit or anything in the days when you were doing nursing on the floor?
Well, I started out in college wanting to be an orthopedic nurse because I had an incredible mentor who was an orthopedic nurse, had her doctorate, and she was mentoring me. And I was just overwhelmed with her ability and with her generosity of spirit. And then the government sent some money, rained some money down on the institution and said, if you would only be a psychiatric mental health nurse, we would pay for your last 2 years of your academic studies, undergraduate, and 2 years of a master's program anywhere in the country. And so I was bought out.
Well, that's okay. I mean, that couldn't have been a better buyout.
Yeah, I love it.
That's amazing. Yes, and even now, I think that we probably have similar programs because there's still a major need, for psychiatric nursing for sure. There definitely is. So that is great. Now, where did you start out with your nursing
I started
learning?
with a baccalaureate program at the University of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay. So I have to say that almost every time I do these interviews, there's a connection between me and the person that I'm interviewing. I actually got my women's health nurse practitioner master's from the University of Cincinnati as well. And so I have a lot of good, warm feelings about that program there. And it's a very old baccalaureate nursing program. I think it might be the oldest in the country, if I'm not mistaken. So that's amazing.
It competes with University of Minnesota. I think they kind of have a tension about who was first.
Okay. Well, we'll say UC just because we were from there, but that is amazing. So wonderful. Now, the nurses that we have now, a lot of times when we have conversations, and I've had the opportunity also to have on this program the current president of the American Nurses Association. I know that you're a past president as well. And one of the things we talk about is that a lot of times student nurses don't recognize the value of representation or of the membership in national organizations. Can you speak a little bit, Dr. Malone, to the reasons why students need to put more value on that?
Well, I can say that when I started out, I was a loner, and that being a loner does not help you in terms of association work at all. And so I just thought I could do it all by myself. And I think many of us do. And I had a lot of things on my plate. I had a marriage, I had children, so there are a number of things that get in the way of you understanding the power of an association. But when I was working on my doctorate, and the doctorate required me to be a member of the American Nurses Association.
Wow.
And it was the ANA Minority Ethnic Fellowship Program that funded my doctoral preparation, and it was just part of what was required. So when I talk to my colleagues, I'm saying, I totally understand where you are, because I was there. And if once again, if they hadn't provided the support for me, I don't even know if I would have joined the American Nurses Association. It's very short-sighted, but that's where I was. So I have an appreciation for my colleagues about where they are, that we think we've got so much. Why can we add another layer to anything?
Mhm.
But the truth is, if you want to get anything done, you can't get it done by yourself. And so the reason that you go in is because of the power of numbers. And the American Nurses Association offers nurses the opportunity to work from a powerful base. It's structured and built around making sure that nurses, all types of nurses, are getting the opportunities, understanding the possibilities, understanding not just the clinical part, but the educational part and the political part of all of healthcare, and that you really can't take good care of patients by yourself. It is not a singular solo idea of taking care of patients. And so when I am at the bedside, when I was at the bedside, I could see the linkage between where I was at the bedside all the way to Congress, that the decisions they were making in Congress had an effect on the care I was delivering to my patients. And I needed some way to speak up. And the ANA is a wonderful platform to stand on and raise your voice and make sure people hear it. Now I'm the CEO, president and CEO for the National League for Nursing. And I think it's also a wonderful platform, specifically designed for nurse educators, nurse faculty. But the ANA is sort of the house big enough for all nurses, all types of nurses. And so I always believe that we should have at least two organizations, whatever our specialty is, and education, maybe three: education, your specialty, and then the American Nurses Association.
Well, that's an amazing way. I love how you put that too, because every nurse can understand that the last thing you want to do is be taking care of a patient and it's just you. I come from labor and delivery, so the room is full. The nurses in ICU, every unit that you work in, having those persons there to collaborate with you is certainly good. And I also love the fact of thinking about the connections that are made with congressional decisions. I know that you have had a lot of work done in the political arena as well. And a lot of times with nurses, we think that, just what we do in voting may be enough, or, just we think in a smaller space, but those decisions that are made do affect us. And I think that a lot of that came to bear as well with COVID. I don't think we can have any healthcare conversations from now to the end of time without having a conversation about COVID. During the time since the pandemic has begun, Dr. Malone, how has the vision, or how has the need, do you think, of nursing changed? The needs of nurses in general changed over the time period. We used to hear talking about, I've heard about nursing shortage since I became a nurse, and then now the travel nursing, there's so many different little pieces. How do we flesh out what we as nurses really need in this climate?
Well, one of the things, I'm a psych mental health nurse and a licensed clinical psychologist. And one of the things that we have to deal with is the well-being of nurses. Because if COVID showed us anything, it was the fact that nurses will work until we have very little anything on our bones. I mean, we will work and do the work that others are frightened to do. We will work and do the things from cradle to grave. We will be there. We are your companion as well as your carer. And so I think that that's a very powerful place to be, and that we need to make sure that nurses take care of themselves. It's that old thing about being on a plane and, put the air mask on yourself first before you try to give someone else some assistance. And nurses need to do that so much that we need to think about, how do we take care of ourselves? Even if I want to take care of others, do I have enough energy? Do I have enough time? Do I have enough ability to take care of others when I'm not taking care of myself? So well-being to me is one of those hugely important issues for nursing. And COVID brought that to the fore, but it wasn't that COVID created that.
Yes.
Nurses needed to take care of ourselves way before then. but it was highlighted. It was on TV. You saw our colleagues where they were just exhausted, incredibly exhausted, and wanting to give care, but not even having the energy or ability to do anything else, crying and in tears. I mean, it was very powerful, because someone lifted the curtain and basically showed what that was. And so we need to understand that well-being is one of those big issues for us. The other issue for me is climate. I'm into climate these days. I'm into the fact that the world is changing in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and I'm not able to change it. And that every fire, every time that there's not enough water, all of those things that nurses, we need to know about. We need to understand that. So I think climate is one of those big issues, and I think it's one of those now issues. I think having enough nurses of color is another issue, that we just don't have enough. That you can talk all day about making sure that we look like the people that we're serving, but the truth is that if we're not preparing them in schools, and they're not getting those advanced degrees like the one you've gotten and others get, then we won't have enough nurses. And that's one of the places the shortage comes from, is not enough faculty. But okay, so we say not enough faculty, but then we get to another level where it's not enough faculty of color.
Yes. Yes. And I do think all of those, just very important issues. The faculty of color, definitely, because in thinking back even to my own nursing education, starting in an associate's degree program, just the fact that we did have at least 2 women of color that were faculty made a big difference, for me personally. And I know that now, being a member of a nursing faculty, that's something that we talk about at Regis, about wanting to have that diversity, but we have to have the pool to pull from, Yeah, we have to have the pool to pull from so that makes a difference. One of the things I really love about these conversations, Dr. Malone, is that it sparks a thought for each of us. I never would have thought about the connection between climate, natural disasters, and things that happen, and how all of this also affects us as nurses, because we're the ones that end up caring for the folks that come through these. So those connections that we make are really a part of why we do these conversations, so that we can think beyond the halls of the hospital or the halls of the clinic as to what actually is going to happen outside of there. So I appreciate that so much. And in when we were talking about membership, I wasn't a member of any nursing association until I got into my doctorate program. And when I met with Dr. Grant from the American Nurses Association, the first thing he asked me was, "Are you a member?" Well, fortunately, I had become a member that morning, so I could tell him yes. So I'm very grateful. So I will be looking into membership for NLN too, as a nurse educator, because I can see now the importance of it. So I do really love the conversations for that. As we, kind of pull, I'm not going to say pull away from the pandemic, because this is something we're going to carry with us, as nurses. I've interviewed quite a few that had a lot of issues, some that have left nursing completely, others that have left from the bedside nursing and doing other forms of nursing. So we know that COVID has really changed quite a bit in this climate. As we look to the future, what are things that you would admonish the students that are coming out, particularly those that are taking on graduate roles, whether it's in nursing education or whether it's in clinical practice? What are things as far as the future of nursing that you think we need to have a firm grasp on, as particularly for those that are educating, those of us that are educating the group of nurses that are coming through? Because I will tell you that students today are different than students were. I mean, I was in nursing school 20 years ago, and there was a different mindset. There was the ways of learning were different. We didn't have as many online programs as we have now, even what we have at Regis.
I think that we are different. It's not, that nursing is a microcosm of the larger world. And so it's not that just our students are different.
True.
The world is different.
Yeah.
And when we were coming through, and I'm taking the opportunity to put myself with you, although I think I must be older, we were different than the faculty who taught us.
Yeah, we were.
They probably shook their heads and said, "Oh my goodness." So I think we need to back up a little bit and give our wonderful cavalry, because this is the cavalry that's coming to rescue us.
You're right.
They are the ones who are going to be caring for us. And give them some support. Some mentoring is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that they can kind of distinguish between a wall and a door. That's what a mentor does.
Oh, I love that.
Help them to find the escalator, the elevator in terms of
Mm-hmm.
their careers. Make sure that they know that we're on their side and that we're not incriminating them because they understand technology while we kind of fumble around with it. I remember my great grandmother, she would say, I'm not flying. If God wanted me to fly, he would have given me wings. And, I said, but you want to go more than just around the corner. She would. So there's always been this tension between generations,
Mm-hmm.
and we should embrace it. I'm thinking of how can we embrace the next generation? How can we embrace the students who are different from us? But they're asking for differences. And differences include equity.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I want some differences. I don't want it to be the same. When I came through my program, there were issues of equity.
Oh, yes.
So why would I want it to repeat itself? Why would I want some of the teachers that I didn't like? Why would I want to teach like they taught? I wanted to be done differently. I wanted to have opportunities to bring in new thoughts, new ideas. I want to know how I can work, how I can become the learner, and some of my students actually the teacher in terms of technology. And it's okay, because I understood when I took nursing into my heart, it would be a lifelong learning process.
Yes.
And that included me moving from teacher role into learner role. And there should be some ease. It should be almost like a dance. I'm in the teacher role. I'm in the learner role. I'm in the teacher role. I'm in the learner role. There's nothing wrong with moving back and forth. So I think we need to do some self-examination of us. The good things that we got from when we were going through our programs. Yes, we need to transmit those to our colleagues, the students coming along. And I call them colleagues because anyone who touches patients, my colleagues.
You're right.
But we should not condemn them, and we should not harass them, as I wonder what's going on in their heads. They seem to be so uncaring, or they seem to be so this or so that. I just don't buy it. I buy the fact that nursing is an amazing profession, and it draws in people who really care. The definition for caring is promoting health, healing, and hope in response to the human condition. So we need every nurse we can. There is not a door you can walk through in the country, in the world, where there's not a nurse if you need assistance. Nursing is amazing. I am so honored just to be called a nurse.
I really, that could be a whole TED talk that you just gave, one for nursing faculty, because I can say I'm guilty of the same things. But as you mentioned, we should not want them to have to go through the things that we went through, in nursing school in a lot of ways. So I really love, and I'm an analogy person too. So the wall and the door, I really get. And I think some of us were on the escalator, but we want other people to take the stairs. And so
That's right.
that, yeah. Yeah, so that is definitely a mindset. So I really appreciate the vision that you have, and that shows that while you're in the position that you're in with leadership. And I've often said myself, when you say about the Calvary, I will tell students, listen, one of these days I'm going to be older and I'm going to have somebody open the door to come take care of me. And if it's you, I want to be able to say, thank you, Lord, because I know that you're someone that's well trained and that's able to provide the care. Well, Dr. Malone, I can tell you that this conversation is just one that lights such a fire for me. And I know it will do the same for the students and the faculty even. And I'm going to encourage the faculty when we have faculty meeting to make sure they watch this, because I think just the piece there about bridging that gap that shouldn't really be there between us and the generation that's coming in that's going to be doing nursing is something that will really, it's a way of taking care of ourselves. It ties into taking care of ourselves. Yeah.
That well-being piece that we talked about.
It definitely is a big part of that well-being. Well, I thank you so much. I know you have a crazy schedule, but we surely appreciate you talking with us for a few minutes today. And we're glad to have you here on our program.
Delighted to be here, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.